Well, welcome. Thank you for coming. This is our first inaugural Brown Bag Luncheon for the GPPCMA Emerging Professionals Task Force. So thank you for taking the opportunity to join us today. And without further ado, intro to AV.
Thank you. Let me start with, maybe we could just go around the room and do a quick, intro.
I'm Laura Yankavich. I work here at ACP, and I'm helping Belinda and Ashley put this on, so hope you guys like it.
I'm Astrid Schreier. I'm the meeting manager at Fernley & Fernley. I also sit on the board of the Greater Philadelphia PCMA chapter, as well as the current chair of the Emerging Professionals.
I'm Nicola Pavano. I also work at Fernley & Fernley. Today's actually only my third day, and I'm the meeting coordinator.
I'm Angela Pierre. I work at the Wyndham Hotel at 4th and Arch Street as the sales manager for group business.
And my name is Michael Devereaux. I'm the training sales manager.
Lashana Mackey, one of the meetings associates at AACR.
My name is Chris O'Keefe. I'm the conference center coordinator for AACR.
My name is Ashton Astorga. I am a meetings coordinator for the AACR.
Jacqueline Coco, meetings associate AACR.
Kate Isbell, meetings associate AACR.
Just technical support. John Little, IMS Technology Services, National Account Manager with IMS.
You want to tell a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I've been with IMS for about 3 years. I have a background in audio engineering, went to Temple, represented. That field did not really work out because everybody's doing it from home for cheap, so went into account management and still get to do a little bit of what I love with technology, and appreciate all your time today. Looking forward to chatting with each of you a little bit and see what we can teach you a little bit here with AV.
I'm Greg Camprath. I'm an account executive with IMS Technology Services. I've been in audiovisual for about 10 years. I came out of IMS this year. So I'm working with events from all across the country. Prior to that, I was doing hotel audiovisual. So I was at the Four Seasons, the Sofitel and the Ritz here in Philadelphia. So, AV 101. What's in it for me? So, to start off with, I kind of want to ask you, just quickly, what are you hoping to get out of the session today? What brought you here?
So I think for AACR specifically, I know we have very intense AV standards over there. So I don't know a lot. I know a lot about that, but I don't know a lot more of like the basic generic audiovisual, I guess.
Okay.
From an association standpoint as well, working for an AMC, we have different needs all across, and just kind of understanding a little better that so when we're handed a proposal, we have the ability to know what's included in it, or be able to fight back of what we actually need versus what's proposed, things like that.
Yeah. So broadly, what we're hoping to do is help you have better meetings, maybe lower your stress, as you mentioned, knowing what you're looking for on a proposal, maybe reduce your costs because you can spot some stuff that you don't need, or maybe improve your attendee engagement because you can pick out some services that meet your event goals. On the agenda, John and I kind of anticipated that there'd be a variety of experience and comfort levels with audiovisual. So what we're hoping to do is run through our agenda and then leave enough time that we can get questions, maybe questions that were prompted by our slides or something that you brought with you. And also feel free to interrupt us throughout. We're going to do video, audio, lighting, and quote, cool stuff. Start off with video. Probably have all encountered this tripod screen. Who can tell me, maybe some advantages or disadvantages of a tripod?
Easy to put up and take down.
Yeah, it's very fast. One guy, drop it in, pretty cheap. Disadvantage is it maybe doesn't look the best. You're popping up, so it's imprecise size. You might have like some gaps in the top and bottom, and it's front projection only. So you're going to have a projector sitting out in front of the room. Fast fold. What are maybe some advantages or disadvantages of fast fold screen if you used one before?
I actually don't know the difference between the two. Didn't know there was a difference.
I use these a lot, but I don't know.
Okay. So FastFold, I mean, the first thing that you might notice is it maybe looks a little bit better. FastFold, you typically see them that have the drape around all around the screen. They have precise dimensions. You know, FastFold is a frame that's assembled, and it's always going to be, like, say, 7.5 by 10. That's what its size is. And the screen itself doesn't have to be attached to legs. So you might see a FastFold screen that's also attached to truss, or it's built into a set that, you know, the rest is the staging. Downsides of the FastFold, you know, it's slightly higher cost, and it's also more involved setup. This isn't something that you're going to ask for 10 minutes before your event starts. You know, it takes a while to set up, and you need at least a couple of technicians to do it. Ultra-wide format.
Mm-hmm.
You might have seen this, you know, Steve Jobs announcing the latest iPad. What are some positives and negatives of a screen that looks like this, if you know?
It looks so pretty.
That's the obvious thing, you know, the wow factor. If you're trying to impress your attendees, they might come away from this session and be like, this thing was on point. It also has a lot of room for content. With something big like this, you know, you can do a picture-in-picture where maybe you have, you know, your slides on one side and then a shot of your presenter, a video shot on the other side. Downside is price. The screen itself costs money. You're going to need at least a couple projectors for this. You know, behind the screen, there's probably 3 20,000 lumen projectors. You need a fancy switcher. And it's also typically rear projection only. So if you're trying to, you know, fit a bunch of stuff in a room, you need to keep that in mind that you're going to have this space behind the screen that you can't use if you're doing something like this. Does anyone know what aspect ratio is? Aspect ratio is essentially just how wide something is compared to how tall it is. So for example, this is a 16:9 image. So it might be 16 inches across and 9 inches tall. Or it could be 16 feet across and 9 feet tall, but the point is it's the same ratio. So suppose you're having an event and you're going to show all of your executives Groundhog Day, and so you got this image and it's widescreen, but suppose it was on the screen that we're using here in this room. Well, when you project it, you're going to have a letterbox. You're going to have these real estate on the screen, real estate that you paid for that you're not using. On the other hand, suppose you're going to show your executives an old clip from Full House, specifically the episode where the Beach Boys made a guest appearance, and you wanted to show it on a widescreen flat panel TV. When you do that, you're going to have these empty spaces on the sides. Or, God forbid, you're going to stretch it out, and then everybody looks kind of bloated and weird. So the reason I mentioned this is that when you are getting your presentations from, you know, the different presenters at your event, or you're putting together content yourself, you're going to know what your aspect ratio is, and then make sure that your AV partner is providing the same thing. So it doesn't, the way things are going, most stuff these days is starting to go widescreen. But what's important is that you just match it up so you know you're getting the most bang for your buck. How do you know how big of a screen you need?
Usually put the size of the room.
Yeah.
This is an obvious factor. You know, when I worked at the Sofitel, the ceilings in our ballroom were only 12 feet high. And then you factor in, well, you got chandeliers, so maybe that's, what, 10 feet. So the largest screen that we put in there is a 7.5 by 10. The other thing is attendees. So you might have a room, and this has happened to me, where it's a relatively low ceiling, but a really long room, and you've got a lot of attendees. You're still going to need more screen space, so maybe you need more screens. But the point is, you know, there's a certain number of attendees, and after that, you know, they're not going to be able to see, no matter, you know, it doesn't matter what size your room is. And lastly, seating style. So maybe you've got, I don't know, you'll see some of this more like fundraisers or something. Maybe there's a weird seating arrangement. People are far away from the screen. So even if you've only got 10 people in the room, if one of them is 100 feet away, you're going to need a bigger screen. So how far away can you put someone from the screen? This is a rough rule of thumb of essentially just the length of the screen times the width. So in the example I gave of a 7.5 by 10, 75 feet. So the last row of seating that you have, you're going to want to put them no more than 75 feet from the screen. Lumens. Anyone know what lumens are? You know where lumen is the unit of measurement. Do you know where it came from originally? I should have had like prizes to give out. A lumen was originally supposed to be the light from a single candle. That was the original measurement. But essentially, it just tells you how bright something is. So if you got a breakout room, maybe you got 50 attendees or something like that using a tripod screen. As a general rule of thumb, something like a 3500 lumen projector is bright enough. And that's including, like, say, a Windows or something like that. If you're in a general session, you're going to want something a little bit brighter because the screen's usually bigger. You may see something like 6,000 lumen up to 12,000. I mean, they have 20,000. It can go up from there. So hopefully the AV partner that you're working with can guide you a little bit. But this also will kind of help you say, oh, wait a second, so it's not right here. I need to follow up on this particular thing. How far does the projector need to be from the screen? You might be asking, why do I care? But this goes back to the thing I was talking about, rear projection. Say you aren't quite sure you can fit all the people you want to in your room. Maybe you've got bars, you've got a band, sponsors that you all need to fit in there. So you're going to want to know how much space the audiovisual is taking up. So a rough rule of thumb is the width of the screen times the lens. So when you get a proposal from a partner, it should list what the lens is on there. I mean, hopefully your partner will be able to tell you off the bat, like, okay, this takes up 10 feet. But if they don't, each lens will have a measurement. Multiply it. So here's an example. This 7.5 by 10 screen is a zoom lens. So it has a short version and a long version. So the minimum distance is you need 26 feet, max you need 33 feet. So that might be a case where you've got a screen, and then in the back of the room you've got a projector on a stick of truss. This works the same way for rear projection. You can figure out the same calculation. Say, okay, I need 8 feet behind my screens. And that helps you kind of plan for how much seating and other stuff you can fit in the room. Who can tell me something about switchers? Just what are switchers in general? What would you use it for?
You were switching between two laptops.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. Say you've got a laptop at the podium and you've got a laptop at the tech table, and you don't want to have to unplug cables and switch them back and forth. A switcher lets you do that, keep everything connected. Punch switch, I'll go over very briefly. Just don't use one of these. If you see this on an order, you should probably ask for something else. The advantage of these is that they're very cheap. The disadvantage is that they have like a really abrupt switch when you're going between two devices. And they also do this thing, and I don't know if you've seen it, the projector doesn't auto-adjust. So the words auto-adjust literally come up on the screen, and then the image, jerks around until it resizes. That can happen in the middle of your meeting. So ideally, try to avoid this. Mostly seamless. This slide is specifically about the Folsom Presentation Pro. For whatever reason, this is like a standard in the industry. If you go to any shop, any AV partner, they're going to have this type of switcher. The advantage of this is it's good for PowerPoint. It's cost effective. Also lets you save a logo. Say you literally just have one computer. You're at the end of your PowerPoint. You can switch to your saved logo, do what you need to on your desktop, put your next PowerPoint up, and switch back, and nobody in your audience knows, no one's the wiser. So it's a nice little feature. One downside of this particular switcher is that it freezes for like a second when you change sources. So say that you had a live video feed of a presenter, and you switch, their mouth's open, there's this like disorienting moment where they're frozen and it's up on the screen for everybody to see. So it's, if you're looking for a seamless presentation, it doesn't quite do it for you. Seamless space switchers from the future. I'm not going to list models here because there are a lot of nice high-end switchers, and ideally, you'll just talk to your partner about what's a good option for you. But what these do, they have a great presentation. They have a lot of options, like picture-in-picture, like we're talking about with the Steve Jobs screen. Lower thirds, so say, for example, on the bottom of the screen, you want to have your logo and maybe the event name, and that stays across all of your content that's coming up on the screen. They do transitions. Disadvantage is these are higher costs. Also, you're going to want to make sure that the technician operating this knows what they're doing. This presentation pro is pretty straightforward. I mean, any one of you could probably operate it once it's set up because you're just pressing these buttons. But you definitely want someone who knows what they're doing with a high-end switcher. Now I'll go over a couple more terms. Competence monitor. You can tell me what that is.
It's the screen that, like a presenter uses, like either on the floor or something, that they can see what they're talking about.
Yeah.
While they're.
So for example, when I'm talking here and I'm like looking back here to see what it is, I could have a smaller screen up here showing the same thing. That way, your presenter is keeping contact, staying engaged with the audience. Kind of similar idea, teleprompter. I mean, you've heard everybody give the president our time about using a teleprompter. It's essentially like a transparent screen, lets you read from a script, and it looks as if you're making eye contact, but actually you're reading instead of looking down at the papers in front of you. Delay or repeater screen. So we talked about a case where maybe the room doesn't allow you to have a very big screen, but you've got 1,000 people. So what you could do is you could have your primary screens, and then halfway back in the room, you have a delay or repeater screen showing the same material, and that way your people in the back of the room can see what's going on. IMAG. Does anyone know what that stands for? It's image magnification, but for some reason, everybody in audiovisual only says IMAG. It's essentially just a shot of your presenter video that's put up on the screens. So in that scenario where you have your repeater screens, there's people in the back of the room, the presenter's just going to look like, a little stick figure to them. You can have a video shot, close up their face on the screen so that everybody in the back of the room still has that experience of immediacy. All right.
Let's jump into audio. Start off with microphones. Most of you are probably using wireless microphones. There are several different types of wireless mics. You can also have wired mics on podiums. Benefit to that is that it saves costs, but immobile. So for wireless microphones, you have handheld microphones, which are standard, just walking around handheld microphones. Lavaliers or clip-ons, so belt packs that you'll see, the lav that you just hook onto your presenter. I'm sure most of you have been have used this on one of your events. And then for a more engaging presenter, you might want to have a countryman or an ear set, which actually hooks over the ear and then comes around to the mouth, the Britney Spears mic, if you will. So a couple different types of wireless. Gooseneck, that was typically used for podium mics or podiums. They have the little hooks inside the podiums up in the corners, just hooked right in there. Push-to-talk microphones, typically for table set mics or for panel discussions where you might not want to have the mics always on, having them on the table with a little function so that each of the presenters can just hit on and then push to exactly what it is, push to talk. And then PCMA microphones, which are otherwise called boundary microphones. They can be fixed to surfaces to get the reflections of sound waves. So they're generally used for ambient sounds. If you really need to have a recording, say, of a live event for a lot of audience claps, you want to hear the audience. Those are generally a good thing to use along with maybe condenser mics that you might have set up in the room, depending on how intense the recording is. But you won't see a whole lot of them, but just in case you ever see a PCMA or a boundary mic on your order, that's what that is. Something else to mention for microphones, with each of the different types of microphones, there's also patterns. So each different microphone has a pickup pattern is what it's called. And what that is basically the shape in which the microphone is able to pick up sounds. Standard for handheld microphones is a cardioid pattern, which essentially is the shape of a heart, hence cardioid, cardio. And what that does is allow just for, if you're holding it like this, a bubble right in front of the speaking area and not picking up where the microphone might be held from behind. So it wouldn't pick up any audience sounds, just what's directly in front of it. Other types of microphones that you might see on orders are condenser microphones, which are omnidirectional, but they can also be adjustable for bidirectional. So it all depends on where you want the microphone to be picked up from. Handheld mics are going to be mostly what you'd be working with, but again, if you're doing intensive recordings for your general sessions or things of that nature, you might see some of these additional mics. And you can always consult with your AV partner to ask about what is appropriate. Direct box. What this does essentially is converts PC audio or other types of devices into a sound level that can be used for representation over a loudspeaker. If you were to plug your PC or your iPhone directly into a mixer, it would not be at an audible sound, or at least it would be at a very low sound and be difficult to mix. What this box does is brings it up to a level that is standard with the rest of the inputs on a mixer. So it is in line with your microphones, and they can all be mixed accordingly. And it also protects equipment. So if there's surges or anything like that, it's not going to damage the equipment that's plugged into it. Some audio tips. So how do you determine what kind of sound system you would use? For a general rule of thumb, if you look at the size of the room and the number of attendees, your AV partner should be able to help you guide that. But for a general rule of thumb, 30 people or less within a room does not require a microphone. Much as in this room, my voice can project far enough. Again, it's going to depend on the room. So if you have a low talker or a panel discussion up at the front of the room, and it really does need to have clarity through all of your attendees, that's something to consider. But 30 people or less usually does not require one.
Or elderly attendees.
Yeah. Other audio tips. You might have had front-facing speakers or front-fill speakers on an order before and had the option to use in-house audio, much like you see in this room. And a suggestion might have been made to not use that. The reason is that in-ceiling audio is generally not ideal for clarity. So with these speakers, if you look up at them, you see that it's coming down on you. The waveform of the sound that is coming is not at a natural angle for your ears to interpret them. Front-facing speakers is representing the audio in a much more clear way. So I would recommend for built-in audio systems for mainly voice. If you're going to be using any type of music or representing any bands, I would certainly put in a full sound system to have the best audio quality. But again, for something of this nature, this is great for a conference room or something along those lines.
I was going to say, coming from hotels, I also, just on a practical level, a lot of times this in-house system just doesn't get maintained very well. So, I mean, it's not even like a high-polluting type thing. It's like nobody's putting money into it for the last 10 years. Like, that's a pretty common thing in a lot of ballrooms. Another suggestion is don't pass around U-shaped participant microphones. Generally, if you're going to have that, have a facilitator in the room to pass around that microphone because it won't happen, or appropriate coverage around in here, say a push-to-talk or an always-on mic, one per 3 or 4 people would be appropriate.
For Q&A sessions in large general sessions, you might have heard presenters complain that they can't hear from the back of the audience, even if they have a microphone. And the reason is that the presenter is on stage, and the sound system, whatever sound system that may be, would have the speakers in front of the stage. So while the rest of the audience can hear that question, the presenter is actually behind the audio that is being presented. So having a on-stage audio monitor is a good suggestion if you're going to have very intensive Q&A sessions, so that that presenter can then hear the questions that are being posed even from a distance within the room. Mixers, you need one. What it does is combines all of your microphones and all of your devices together, and then allows the technician within the room to adjust those levels accordingly. Astrid.
Do you need a mixer if you only have one microphone, though?
It depends on where that microphone is being plugged into.
Okay.
9 times out of 10, still yes.
Yeah. Because to be able to control the sound.
Yes. Along with that, for something of that situation, it'll probably have some equalization, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about.
So that's the biggest argument I have is like they're always telling you need mixers if you have multiple, and then it's like you see one on there. But like there's only one. You told me I needed it. There was multiple to control the levels between them.
Even with one microphone, if that presenter is speaking very loudly, is not audible enough, you want to be able to have the control to be able to turn it up and down. Okay. It depends on the application, depends on the situation,
If it's some sound systems have like the volume on the wall, like it's built in, then it's not really a big deal. But anytime if you anticipate needing to adjust the volume at all, then you probably need it.
But an EQ or an equalizer, so different rooms have different dynamics within those rooms. You might notice that a very large general session is somewhat cavernous at the beginning when you're getting set up. But you need to adjust that for the audience to be able to hear clearly without the echoes within the room. An EQ will help adjust the dynamics with it, not so much the dynamics, but the frequencies that are being heard from the audience. So, for instance, if there is a very high-pitched sound that is coming, the technician should be able to find that frequency and pull it down a notch so that it is a more level sound representation. But generally, it makes things sound better and helps prevent feedback. So that screeching sound that you hear when people get too close to sound systems, this can prevent that. And you'll see this on most gig racks that are on orders. Usually it's in a rack that will have multiple processors, so you'll have an EQ and maybe some compression and some other things. But generally, this is a good thing to have for if you're going to have a mixer and multiple microphones. I'm going to hand it back to Greg.
Lighting. Why do I need lighting? Like, what's the scenario where you have to have lighting?
Like specific lighting, not just the regular lighting.
Yeah, like audiovisual lighting. When you're working with your AV partner, and then.
General session where you want a spotlight on your major keynote speaker, or if you're videotaping and you need the lighting so they're not washed out because the lighting in the ceiling might not be enough.
Yeah, you got it exactly. It's essentially just if the in-room lighting is not enough and you literally can't see your presenter, so just general lighting. Video recording. If you want a professional result, you almost always need additional lighting for a video record. And the same goes for IMAG, what we're talking about, where if you're putting a presenter up on the screen, you're going to just need some general lighting. Why do I want lighting? It's because lighting can transform a space. You can create depth, dimension, you can direct your attendees' attention to certain items, and essentially just engagement. All right. I don't have laser point anymore. This is just an example of general lighting. These are LECOs or ellipsoidals. This is like the workhorse light that you'll probably see on order for just general stage wash. And you can see, you know, it's got this aura around him that's just a general stage wash. You'll see that term a lot. Does anyone know what is creating this pattern here? Anyone besides Astrid? Gobo, that's right. So, does anyone know what a gobo actually is? Like, physically, what it is?
That's metal that's carved in the shape that you want?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So it's like a stencil of light, kind of.
I had mine this morning. I should have brought it with me.
So that example I showed you, the Lycos, you know, you put this little piece of metal in front of it and it creates a pattern. So, you know, you see this a lot at weddings. They'll do the couples monogram. But another thing that this is good for is sponsors or branding, just in general. You know, if you are trying to show value for your sponsor, you want to highlight a particular sponsor, you could shine their logo on the back wall of the set. You can do it on the floor. You can do it over the door as people are going in the entranceway. Here's another example of what you can do with gobos. If you have an event theme, you can do specific shapes. So here's an event, the theme, I think it might be winter. You can do stuff, you know, city skylines, James Bond, you know, just any sort of theme, you know, you can get a related logo, or you can do abstract patterns, which is more just the thing we're talking about, adding depth or dimension. All right. Does anyone know what is causing these fields of light here?
They're uplights.
Uplights.
Yeah.
What would you use an uplight for?
Like a column or number of buttons.
Yes. Uplights are a relatively cost-effective way to you know, kind of transform the space, let you do colors like, say, you're trying to match your branding. And they also have the advantage that these days most uplights are LEDs, so they're energy efficient. So if you have a client who's looking for something that's green, that's, you know, you can kind of emphasize LED lighting as an option. These things, anyone guess what they are? I know it's a really bright picture. They're intelligent lights, or movers. Has anyone used those before? What they are is, it's a lighting fixture, but it rotates around, and it has different colors, different patterns. So what you see on the ceiling here, these are moving colored patterns. They can go around the room. So what is this good for? I mean, pretty much anytime you want to do something flashy, you're trying to impress people, and it's especially good for when something's happening. So say a person is walking on stage, a person is leaving stage, you announce an award winner, you're revealing a product, you know, anything where you're like, bam, everything moves at the same time. You know, this requires programming and it's more expensive, but it's definitely an option when you're trying to really wow people. Pin spots. What do you use them for? Yeah. Probably the most common thing you'll see them for is, like, especially weddings, social functions, you're highlighting the centerpieces on tables. Some other uses might be, like we just had a client who was doing an awards gala, and part of that was a silent auction. So they had a bunch of items out, and they wanted to highlight the stuff on the table. So you had pin spots focused on each particular item. You know, do highlight cakes, food stations, things like that.
All right, fun stuff. Scenic and stage sets. You know, I hear a lot of times we don't have the budget for scenic. That's not something that our clients really interested in. You can really do some interesting things with just some fabric and lighting. And what that is soft set. So spandex that is stretched off of truss can really add depth and dimension to a stage and still do it at quite minimal cost. So something like this, All it is a couple LED lights and some stretch fabric, and it's very easy, very cost-effective. Some other things that we can do, these are basically just stackable cubes. So modular hard sets is what this is an example of here. These are clear acrylic cubes that can be stacked or placed in any type of format that you'd like on a stage. The back of the stage as a backline, or perhaps you want to add some depth to the stage. It's a very large general session and it doesn't look just flat from the back of the room. You want to pull it up a little bit. Maybe you have half of these on the front of the stage in front of the speaker, just on the floor, and then some more in the back. But these can be uplit to the colors of the association, of the organization, to help enhance branding as well. Getting into a little bit more elaborate are custom hard sets. So these are also modular and can be adjusted to the different sizes of different stages. These squares that you see up here are actually just able to be fixed onto basically a platform within the back and can be done in different patterns. So these are very customizable to the taste and the preference of you or the organization. And also these can then be lit with different colors and really create its own branding as well. But what this does is, again, create depth and dimension to the stage. Another thing to mention is, I'll get into projection mapping, but this can also be used as a canvas. So each one of these different cubes with one of the newer technologies, projection mapping, AV companies can actually program the projector to go to maybe 1 or 2 cubes and have video playing in one of these. Or if we go further, not so much for that one. For other hard sets like this, where you might have some depth to the set, you can utilize the different pieces there to project onto them. So you might have video playing on the side 2 pieces there, and then a static image on the front. So just some really interesting things that you can do with scenic sets. Not just always a set and forget thing. It can really be done to help brand the organization and help create a wow factor or engagement. All right, is anybody using scenic within your, not so much? Wrong group for this.
It would be cool to use. So I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Because I know we use, and I'm sure other people are just using type of drapes as backdrop. Is the spandex like comparable in price, or to do that, like, would you do that instead of drapes?
You can. I would say it's slightly more expensive. It depends on the amount that you're using, the size of the stage.
Just probably the price per square footage, same with how drape is.
That and also the design.
Okay.
So, you know, if you're doing something like wind sails,
yeah,
you might need some additional pieces of truss to make that happen. And if so, then there's just the cost of that. But I would say it's pretty comparable. It's not going to blow up your budget. I think that it's something that can be done within that. So many different options for the hard set, if that ever is something that you might look at. Again, these are basically their own canvas. Each one of these can have lighting, uplighting on the different sets there, or projection, and then again, placed at different places throughout the stage so people can walk up, maybe for award shows, can walk between those sets. So different ideas there. Greg already kind of touched on it, but widescreen lens, what this is kind of replacing scenic and creating a digital landscape. So you might need 3 projectors. It's going to be a little bit more expensive, and the programming that goes into it, as well as the switch, are a little bit more expensive. This is a little bit more high-end, but it really does give you a lot of flexibility in terms of the real estate that you have on that screen. So you might want to have image magnification. You might want to have slides. You also might want to still have branding behind those things. And within a few touches of a button with some programming from a technician, you can have all of that on this digital landscape, basically replacing all of those scenic sets that we were just talking about. So this is something that a lot of, like Apple, I'm sure you've seen on all the product launches, they use this almost exact set. I going too fast? Everybody, questions, comments, concerns? Good. And then projection mapping. So utilizing both a hard set and that widescreen blend, what we're able to do is turn the room itself or those hard sets that we're talking about into canvases for projection. So you might have seen some examples recently of buildings. I know in Philadelphia they used one of the buildings, I forget which one it was, but to play Pong on. And that was just using projection mapping onto the building and then somebody hooking up a Nintendo basically to that, being able to turn you know, buildings, canvases, different types of materials into a screen. So it's something really exciting that's coming up right now, and there's a lot of different things that are being used for it, such as cars, for car unveilings. I know Audi recently did one, and this is becoming a little bit more of a wow factor, something flashy to do within the industry. Some more cool stuff. Audience response systems. If you're dealing with nursing or medical, you probably have dealt with it. It's nothing new, but still, you know, not everybody knows the ins and outs of it. Basically, a keypad for polling. I see you're shaking your head. Use it often?
Not even the devices anymore. It's all our apps.
Exactly. Yeah, so Turning Point is one that has been typically used, but a lot of organizations are moving to the entire phone application where you have the schedule, you have polling, you have ARS, you have the whole shebang, the whole conference all right in your phone. And I see most things probably moving that way pretty quickly in the next couple of years. Webcasting, different platforms will allow you to do different things. So it might just be slides and audio that you're presenting. It might be video, like a go-to-meeting that you're presenting. But different platforms will allow you to have polling within there, Q&A, shareable PDFs or slides, downloads, things like that. And their pricing would be all based on what applications that you're using. General go-to-meetings are very popular and easy to use, or getting into something a little bit more complicated like that where there is two-way communication can quickly get into the more expensive realm, but it all depends on the application. Already talking about apps, as Asher just mentioned, having that all on your phone, having the ARS on there. I'm sure some of you probably have used things like Bloodhound and some other conference apps that are customizable, easy to adjust to the different conferences that you have each year, and then can then be adjusted year after year. But you're able to have all that content in your hand, and it's really handy for attendees to get around. Some other things are digital signage, great for sponsorship. A lot of times I actually hear from clients that it's not that much more expensive, if it is at all, depending on the print, the amount of money that you're putting into print sponsorship. Digital signage, having an LCD screen that can then be interactive with a laptop there, or just slides of the different sponsors. It's a little bit more tech savvy. Attendees will find it a little bit more engaging than the standard print that they typically just walk past. And then within that, you can apply social media and things like that, tweet walls. Are you guys using a lot of social media within your conferences? I mean, from my standpoint, that's something that I was hoping to get out of this is hearing if that is something that you are looking to do, because I'm always hearing it brought up, but not applied a lot. And I'm curious if there's a reason behind that, or if it's just not applicable to some organizations, if you guys are using it, if it's of interest to you.
Probably a mix of both. Some groups just haven't moved that way yet. Some are very much into the mindset of we do things the way we've done things. With other groups, you know, it's staffing, you know, who takes on that role of constantly monitoring social media. Is it something that separate staff is brought into, something that current staff takes on, you know, and coming up with a strategy behind it. You know, so you bring in somebody new to come up with all the strategy and implement it, you know, and it comes down to the money of what the group can do.
Right. So comfort levels.
Yeah, comfort level is a big thing, too.
Interesting, yeah, because I deal with some technology conferences where even they have, you know, complications with that. There's a lot of concern over who is mandating or taking a look at what's going out there, because certainly you don't want to have bad things going up there about the conference. You know, I just threw up because lunch was terrible. You don't want to have that going up in front of 500 attendees. But, yeah, so in my experience, you wouldn't want to have a moderator for something like that. But a lot of conferences are going that way, where there's at least a minimal aspect of the social media involved. Creative video content or sizzle videos, you know, an engaging video to start off the conference, a kickoff. That's something that we're seeing a lot of clients request, or seeing a lot in examples of the larger conferences that we're looking at. And then two that aren't prevalent yet, but I think are going to be a factor in future conferences, is augmented reality and near-field communication. So this is some exciting technology. Does anybody know what near-field communication is? I don't know if you've heard of the recent launch of Apple Pay, where basically you just have your phone and you put it up to something, put your thumbprint on it. Your phones, if not already, will in the future have near-field communication chips. What that does is translate information just by being near a receiver. iBeacon is something else that Apple's been doing. I've been talking about Apple. Something else that Apple's been doing where they envision, if you go into a store like Macy's, they might have a little iBeacon receiver set up. If you walk past the display, it'll immediately beam something to your phone so that that information is there. Hey, there's a sale going on. Stop and look at this. I see conferences going this way. Some hotels are already utilizing near-field communication for registration, for getting into your rooms, just putting your phone up to your door and you're able to get into your room, having locks set for conference managers. So instead of having a key for your GS for certain hours of the day, that person gets that authorization, walks up to that room, and is able to access it between 7 a.m. to 12 a.m. at night. So some interesting things, if not, you know, of immediate use to keep an eye out for, that will be coming into the industry. And augmented reality. So what you see there is an iPad with a camera. Basically, if you go up to I can't think of the word. QR? There it is, QR code, yeah. Go up to a QR code, something similar. It may just be an image in the near future where you're putting your phone's camera up to. It can then pop up images, animations, sponsorships, advertisements, things like that immediately just by recognizing the image, the QR code, whatever it is, and creating what is called an augmented reality. So that information automatically happens on your desktop, on your iPad, on your phone. So like Greg said at the beginning, kind of want to get through here. I know everybody has a different level of understanding of AV. We're certainly happy to go more in depth on some things. Maybe we beat some things up a little bit too much, but happy to answer any questions, chat about what challenges you guys are having in your conferences, and you know, if there's anything that maybe you're unsure of that we could help with.
What is the question that you wanted to know the answer to?
I got mine out with a mix of questions.
Going through different screen types was important to me. I know we use very similar ones for every special conference, but just to know all the different types that can be used was definitely beneficial.
Yeah.
I actually have a question that kind of piggybacks on that. So you guys were talking about the aspect ratio with the different screens. You said that widescreen seems to be the way that it's going now, but a lot of us still working in PowerPoint for these presentations. Can you make PowerPoint so that it's creating your presentation out of widescreen?
Yes, you can.
Okay. How do you do that? I was just thinking in terms of, you know, especially like my groups are medical, I mean, you guys as well, you're dealing with, you know, presentations that are research-based, people that are at, academic institutions who are used to just doing these PowerPoint presentations over and over again, and they're going off of, that 4x3 instead of the widescreen.
Sure. Okay, so I think this is on our local computer, not on the webcast. So sorry, webcast. So when you're in PowerPoint, if you go to design here, and hopefully I memorized this correctly, you can go to page setup.
Oh, and it's right there.
And right here it says slide size 4. So the two most common options are right there, 4:3 and 16:9. One thing you want to keep in mind is that if you have an existing slideshow and you do this, it's going to stretch all of your images. So it's better if you do this before you start building a slide deck, because then as you put stuff in, it'll be the right size. Otherwise, everybody will look weird and stretched out.
I can envision, for breakout, usually probably still the 4x3 is fine, but if you have a keynote speaker who's going to be in the general session and you decide, to use that 16:9 for the big general session room, to know that in advance to be able to tell them, like you said, prior to them creating their presentation, so that you're not dealing with the bars.
Absolutely. Something else that we've recently created, and I don't want to get too IMS branded, but I can certainly send it to you if you're interested, is a presenter checklist and a guide to hand out to your presenters ahead of time so that they have an understanding of what their slides should look like, what are the standards,
Like font sizes, the amount of text on the screen.
Exactly. It's great for slide creation. It's just something that we hear a lot, like, I can't wrangle these presenters, I can't get this, and it's just good to have that say, here, this is really what you need to do on the front end.
Yeah.
So I can certainly send that out to everybody if you're interested. Also, we've created AV glossaries for standard terms that you might not know, but you see a lot. So certainly can hand that out to everybody as well. And we're always happy to answer any questions. If there's nothing else, feel free to give us a call anytime. And we can also share those resources with you as well that we were just talking about, presenter guidelines, AV checklist, things like that. But really appreciate all of your time. Thank you so much for joining us today. Successful turnout for the first brown bag of lunch.
Brown bag lunch. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you taking the time out. And if there's any, we're hoping to do this now more often. Like you said, this is our first one. And we also, the Emerging Professionals Task Force,